Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com, as well as the YouTube channel and NoDQ&A videos affiliate, ringsidenews.com. If you haven't already, make sure you check out the UFC review video that I did with Mike Nagel and Jeff Meacham. We go into detail on all the fights, as well as Brock Lesnar's fight and what will happen with him. Got a lot of your questions regarding Brock Lesnar and his future in wrestling and MMA. So let's get down to the questions today. First one comes from Tom. Your views on Brock Lesnar's UFC win. First time I've ever watched a UFC, thought he looked in good shape, to be honest. I'm very happy for Brock Lesnar, and as you mentioned, he did look in really good shape. And when I saw him at the UFC 200 weigh-in, I started to feel differently about his chances in that fight. I thought that seeing him like that, he looked very focused and determined, and he looked in tremendous shape, better shape than he was in during his previous UFC fights. To me, it was clear this is a guy that really wanted to get back into the octagon and fight, and I'm happy for the guy. He's doing something that makes him happy, and that's competing in the UFC. Now, what does this mean for his future with WWE? That remains to be seen. I got more of your questions here regarding this. Got this one here from British Heel Allen. Could you see Lesnar going to the UFC and trying to get out of his WWE contract because he got the win? I think that's unlikely. I think Brock Lesnar is best off working with both companies. I think it's in everyone's best interest for Brock to be able to do both WWE and UFC. There's a ton of money for Brock to be made, and he's made it clear he's a businessman first. He wants to make as much money as possible, and between UFC and WWE, he can make a ton of money. It's unlikely he will get out of his WWE contract. First of all, I doubt WWE will go for that. They see big dollar signs with Brock Lesnar now, coming off that UFC win. So like I said, what's best for all parties involved is for WWE and UFC to have a working relationship where Brock can continue to do the part-time WWE schedule and appear on the major pay-per-views, and in between maybe do a UFC fight once or twice a year for as long as he wants to do it. That seems to be the best way to go. Brock can be an attraction for both companies and make both companies and himself a lot of money. It's a win-win situation for everyone, and who knows, maybe Brock Lesnar will lose his next fight and he'll be done at that point. You never know, but if he keeps winning, then there's just more money to be made. This one comes from Jishnu. Hey Aaron, do you think hashtag Viper vs. Beast will be the main event of SummerSlam? I think it's safe to say it already is the main event of SummerSlam because of the fact that Brock Lesnar won the UFC 200 event. He is the hottest name right now in combat sports and really the hottest name in professional wrestling right now. Brock Lesnar is once again a special attraction. You know, I talked about before in previous videos how over the past year or so he has really lost some of that star momentum that he had when he first came back to WWE and then when he ended Undertaker's streak. Now he's a hot commodity again, and yeah, it would be foolish to not make Lesnar versus Randy Orton the main event for this year's SummerSlam. Orton's coming back from his injury. A lot of people are anticipating his return. That's a huge match. That's a WrestleMania caliber main event, and the way I see it, there's no other match that WWE can do for SummerSlam that's going to eclipse Lesnar versus Orton. Got this one here from Aditya. Hey Aaron, can Lesnar versus Orton be for the SmackDown World Championship? That's an interesting idea. That is something WWE could possibly consider doing now that Brock Lesnar won that UFC fight. There might be the idea of having Lesnar become world champion again, whether it's on Raw or on SmackDown. And what better way to make that title credible right off the get-go than to have the first champion be decided between a match with Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton. That would be huge to really make that title something special immediately. And speaking of the world title, this one comes from Gareth Smith. Can you see Brock Lesnar being part-time WWE and UFC competitor and possibly holding both heavyweight titles at the same time? By the way, on a side note, you have to love how the cat eats and poops while I'm doing this video. The entire day the cat sleeps, but then when I record, that's when the cat decides to make a lot of noise. Anyways, getting to the question here. Can you see Brock Lesnar being part-time WWE and possibly holding both titles from WWE and UFC? I think it's unlikely that that happens just because Brock has a ways to go. I think at least a couple more fights before he would be in title contention, although in the past, UFC leapfrogged him ahead of several people and put him in the UFC title match when some felt he wasn't deserving of it. That theoretically could happen again. Maybe if Brock wins one more fight, then he could be considered a contender, and they'll just go with that because Lesnar's a box office draw. I mean, when there's money to be made, UFC will put Brock Lesnar in that situation if there's a lot of money to be made. That's the bottom line. It's all about the money, as Vince would say. And that would be really interesting. Brock Lesnar, he wins the SmackDown World title and then went on to win the UFC title. Anything can happen. Never say never. I do feel it's a long shot, but it would be huge. I mean, it would really cement Brock Lesnar as one of the greatest athletes of the 21st century because he was able to be a top guy in the world of entertainment and in a full-fledged sport like UFC, and few people have done it. I mean, like Jim Ross said, he's a one-of-a-kind athlete. I mean, there's no other better way to put it. And I got another one here from British Heel Allen. Do you think they could have done Orton versus Lesnar better? I mean, instead of just matching them up, maybe storyline. I do feel that the concept of less is more is sometimes the best way to go. And for Lesnar versus Orton, I feel that that's the way to go. I feel the only way they could have done this better would have been to actually have Orton return as a surprise. You know, have Brock Lesnar come out with Paul Heyman and gloat about how dominant Brock Lesnar is, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, since he's Randy Orton makes his surprise return, gets in the ring, and has a face-off with Brock Lesnar. I think that would have been the best way to do it. You know, something similar to WrestleMania 27 with Undertaker and Triple H. I think that would have been awesome. But I understand why WWE did it this way. I mean, they got that plug on UFC 200 for Lesnar versus Orton with, you know, millions of people watching either on pay-per-view or at sports bars. A lot of eyeballs saw that commercial. WWE got that publicity for SummerSlam. So, you know, as far as they're concerned, that was the right move to do from a business standpoint, to announce Orton and Lesnar before the fight and get that publicity on the UFC pay-per-view. All right, this one comes from Shiam. In your point of view, which one will be the good push for Neville? Number one contender for the IC title or a feud with Jericho? Drink it in, man. Chris Jericho. Great heel. Him and Neville would have a hell of a program. Why not have Neville win the IC title and then feud with Jericho? There you go. I think that would be an awesome storyline for both of them, Neville and Jericho, and have them feud over the IC title and tear the house down and elevate that title. Why not? You know, I'm kind of over the idea of Miz as IC champion now. I think him leaving to do the movie hurt his momentum as champion, and I'm ready to see the title go with somebody else. I'd like to see Neville win it. I think that would be a great way to get him off to a hot start with his return, and then you could set him up for Jericho. Jericho versus Neville at SummerSlam for the IC title. I'm totally down with it. All right, this one comes from Devin. Hey Aaron, what's the deal with Eric Young? He had a match with Samoa Joe on NXT but isn't around right now. Is he part of WWE? From what I understand, he is part of WWE and the NXT brand, and I think what's going to happen is after the brand extension, we'll start seeing more of Eric Young. There's definitely going to be a need for him, with several guys being called up, whether it's Finn Balor or Samoa Joe or Nakamura or all of them. WWE is going to need some people filling in those spots. WWE will need Eric Young. He's a guy who's a veteran, he's an established name, and WWE is doing well with these other guys, from Joe to Aries, from TNA. You know, I think Eric Young will do well. I think once this brand split goes through, we will see Eric Young more on WWE or NXT programming. This one comes from Joe. How would you book Asuka on the main roster? Would you let her do her mid-match taunts and dances? Please give details. I would let her do whatever's entertaining. It is World Wrestling Entertainment, and the key is to entertain people. I think you want to be careful when you bring her up. You want to bring her up when you have a good storyline for her, and she'll be a featured player. You do not want to bring her to the main roster when you already are pushing a bunch of other women, and they're the ones getting the focus and the attention, and she gets lost in the shuffle. So bring her in when you have a plan for her, and I think when you have a plan for her, bring her up, let her do her own thing. Let her do whatever she feels is entertaining, let her go with her gut instinct, and see what happens. Got this one here from @NoCultZone. Did Andre the Giant's career become as lame as the Big Show's career? How did the territories help his run? How would you use Big Show? Regarding Andre and his career being lame, it was only lame in the sense that his health really prevented him from being able to do much of anything at all. By the late 80s, he was a shell of his former self. He could barely move in the ring. He never did anything really embarrassing, though, like body surfing on his dead father's coffin, stuff like that, or doing silly gimmicks where he's dressing up as Fat Bastard or Hulk Hogan, whatever he was doing at the time. As far as Big Show, with the territories, I mean, yeah, the territories pretty much helped everybody in the sense that you were able to go somewhere else. If you were getting stale in one territory, you could go to the next one. And people really don't have that luxury today because WWE is the only major league game in town. It's either that or the Indies. And as far as Big Show, how I would use him, it's too little too late now. I mean, really, the only purpose in having Big Show around is to help elevate the younger talent. And, he's a giant. And there's only so much you can do with a giant who's just putting people over constantly. Giants should be killers. When Big Show first came into WWE, he should have been a killer right from the get-go and stayed a killer. Instead, they turned him face, and then turned him heel, and then turned him face, and turned him into a comedy figure, and then tried to make him a badass, and then made him a comedy figure again, and you get the point. Got this one here from Executive Enigma. Hey Aaron, would you like to see Brian Kendrick return to the WWE after the Cruiserweight Classic? I would be fine with him being involved in storylines where he's working with younger talent and he can help elevate some younger talent. I would be fine with seeing Kendrick and London come back and feud with the New Day, although I think now it's already too late with New Day surpassing their record. That would have been an interesting storyline to have London and Kendrick come back and try to stop the New Day from breaking their record. But it's too little too late on that. Still, you could get something out of Brian Kendrick, bringing him back and having him work with some of the younger guys and maybe even have him do some matches in NXT. Why not? This one comes from Johnny Goldsmith. And this is sort of related to Brian Kendrick since he was training her. Is Eva Marie simply in the wrong era? 10, 15 years ago, I don't think anyone would have been bothered by her the way they are today. Well, that is true, but the thing is, 10, 15 years ago, nobody really cared about the Divas division. Once Trish and Lita left, it more or less became a joke, and the matches were nothing but filler on pay-per-views, and, 3, 4, 5-minute segments on television, and that was it. And the women were just merely eye candy. It wasn't even about the in-ring performances. So yeah, in the era where it was just about being hot and stripping into your bra and panties, Eva Marie would have done way better. But in today's era, with the workhorses like Sasha Banks and Bayley and Becky Lynch, Eva Marie just doesn't fit in this era. And fans resent the fact that she's getting pushed just merely for her looks. And, she's just not in the right era at this point. And I'm sure she's trying hard, but, she's still not really catching on with fans or really making all that much noise in the company. I mean, she did fine at WrestleMania. She did not have an embarrassing performance. I think a lot of people were hoping she would fail, and she did not. So we'll see what happens. Maybe eventually she'll get an opportunity and she'll run with the ball and she'll become a big star. Who knows? That'll do it for this edition of NoDQ&A video. Thanks as always for watching. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest regarding Brock Lesnar and the UFC 200 Fallout. And I will see you guys next time for more NoDQ&A video.